affects... Hey guys, what's up? Today I'm making the video that I'm excited to make to let you guys know about some things, but also the video that I've been dreading because I know how mean people can be, but it's fine. We're going to get over that because all I'm doing is sharing our story with you guys. So, firstly, I know I've addressed it a couple of times in the vlog, but I've never explained it. I addressed it very, very briefly, but Landon and Logan, my set of 3-year-old twins, are diagnosed with level 2 autism spectrum disorder. If you're not familiar, just a brief rundown. There are 3 levels to the autism spectrum disorder. Level 1, level 2, level 3. Level 1 being the most mild, level 3 being the most severe. So Landon and Logan fall right in the middle at being moderate. So autism is a developmental disorder, so it affects them cognitively rather than physically. So you can't necessarily see autism, but you can see the signs. For Landon and Logan, we noticed from very, very early on, just a real quick rundown. I don't want to go super in depth because that's not what this video is about, but I just wanted to let you guys know how it affects them day to day. But right from the beginning, I want to let you know, as babies, not a whole lot of eye contact, not a whole lot of like snuggly interaction, you know, like you'd expect from a newborn baby. They never wanted any of that really. Not a whole lot of babbling, and the babbling that they did do, they quickly stopped doing, which we'll get to a little bit later. So they just weren't babies that liked a whole lot of affection or attention. And then a little bit later on in their life, meaning between year 1 and year 2, they hit all their physical developmental milestones. Great. They started walking shortly after their first birthday. They started crawling around 9 months or so. So they were a little delayed, but not like anything to be concerned about. Okay, between year 1 and 2, I noticed everything that they did learn, they were quickly forgetting, which I learned that is a term called regression, which is a very common thing in autistic kiddos. So they did that. They were answering to their names still. At almost 2 years old, they still weren't responding to their name at all, which is crazy because like Liam, my baby, is 8 months old and has been responding to his name since like month 5. So I didn't realize these things were weird until I exposed myself to other children their age, and then I'm like, oh, okay, something's a little off here. And now that I've had Liam, I realized, wow, a lot of things were off, but these are my first kids, so I didn't know it. They weren't answering to the name. They weren't following simple commands, such as just like no, like simple commands. They wouldn't, like if I said, here, go throw this away, they wouldn't understand. It was almost like they were deaf. That's what I thought. And then they weren't playing with toys appropriately. So if you would give them a toy, they would, like, here's a Hot Wheel. Like, this is actually something that they love to do. A typical 1 to 2 year old would take a Hot Wheel and roll it like a car would do. They have car mats. They would, like, you know, imaginatively play on the car mat. And my kids were obsessed with just spinning things. They would take anything and just spin it. Literally anything. Like, that's what they were so fixated on, was spinning these, like, toys and not playing with them the way that a typical child would. So those were just some major warning signs. And then the other one that still to this day is our biggest struggle other than communication is their eating. They would not eat anything. I used to complain because they would eat peanut butter sandwiches, hot dogs, chicken nuggets, and oatmeal. And now Landon will only eat the peanut butter sandwiches and the oatmeal. If I put a hot dog near that child, he would freak out. So I shouldn't have complained then. I'm not complaining now because one day they may not even want to eat peanut butter sandwiches and oatmeal. So between 1 and 2 is when I really started to notice, like, wow, something's up. And then we went to their doctor. I think the babies get like an 18-month checkup or something. And they pretty much failed all of the cognitive developmental milestones questions. Like, you know, you get on a little questionnaire. Like, their physical ones were great, spot on. Cognitive, missed every single one. They were so below average. So without me even having to say anything to the doctor, she's like, yeah, maybe you guys should go to the developmental pediatrician. At around, I believe it was around 18 months is when we first started going. The doctor kind of just checked him out, just like observed them for an hour or two. We were in there. She wasn't completely sure. The one big sign for Landon was there was so many toys, just so she could evaluate them, see how the kids played with them, see if they played with them appropriate, see if they had any form of imaginative play, which they didn't, still don't. And all Landon wanted to fixate on this whole entire time we were there was just a plain black and white clock on the wall. He stared at that clock the whole time we were there. So she was like, yeah, something's definitely not right here. But she wasn't completely confident because I felt at that time that they were thriving and making so many strides with their development, and they were. And then we went back at 23 months, so just about 6 months later, and she wanted to evaluate them again to see if they were still thriving. And unfortunately, especially Landon had regressed in doing everything that I felt like he was finally making so much progress on. So she was totally comfortable diagnosing him with level 2 ASD that day. So he's been diagnosed since 23 months. She just wanted to make sure I was comfortable with it. We came to agreement and it was totally fine. She said I handled the news really well, which I don't feel like I should have handled it any worse. Of course, I was sad for a couple of days, wondering if my child will ever get married, will my kids ever have kids, will he ever have a career, will he ever get to be independent, like the things that you want for your kids, you want the best for them. And then I was like, you know what, these are the cards that we were dealt. If this is going to affect him, we're going to make the most of it. I'm going to let him just thrive, so I just knew that it was no longer time to be sad about it. It's time to just help him, get him the services that he needs. So we quickly got them into services, and thankfully that day that Landon was diagnosed with autism, Logan was diagnosed with global developmental delay, meaning he was just delayed in all aspects, but she wasn't completely sure if it was autism yet. So thankfully, he was diagnosed with something that day so that he could also qualify for early intervention services. So they were receiving feeding therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy, group therapy. And then we went back just a little bit later. She still wasn't comfortable because once again, Logan was thriving and he wasn't regressing on anything. I'm like, wow, this kid's amazing. He's amazing anyway. But every time we went in there, she's like, yeah, I don't know, because actually when we were in there, it was the first time I've ever heard Logan say a word. She had shapes in there, and he said circle, and I was like, whoa, I know my kid did not just speak. So that was I believe it was just shortly after they turned 2.5, if I'm not mistaken, or just a little bit after they had turned 2. So we went back just a few months later. So he started to say words, and I was like over the moon. And she's like, yep, I'm definitely not diagnosing him today. Fast forward to a couple of months ago, the boys needed IEPs put in place so they could start preschool. Logan needed one for his global developmental delay. Landon needed one for his autism. And in that IEP process, they do an evaluation with an occupational therapist, a physical therapist, and a psychiatrist. So when the psychiatrist evaluated them both, that psychiatrist was completely confident in finally diagnosing Logan with autism. So he just got his diagnosis right before he turned 3. So he is officially diagnosed autism. But I do want to let you guys know how it affects them day to day, because you guys are going to see that, and I want you to know that they're very different, but they're not weird or anything, they are weird, but they're toddlers. Toddlers are weird. First things that affect them and that you guys are going to notice majorly is their speech that they have. They talk all the time. They never stop, but they don't communicate whatsoever. So they're very repetitive, meaning they'll repeat the things that we say, but they don't know what they mean. They don't communicate. They don't answer the ring still, like I had mentioned. They don't follow any commands. They have no meaning behind the words that they do say. But we're working so hard, and they are thriving. I know to you guys, you're probably like, your kid's not talking. Eventually, they'll learn the meaning behind the words. But for now, as long as I know that their voice works, they'll eventually learn. Whoa! Another thing you're going to notice is their eating is that they don't eat like they should. Like I mentioned, they're very picky about what they eat, but I do give them a multivitamin every day with applesauce, so they do get that. I try to get them the nutrients that they need, but of course, as long as they're fed at the end of the day, that's all I worry about. So you'll notice their eating is very off, and you'll notice that I'm still spoon feeding them. They're not doing that on their own just yet, but we're working so incredibly hard at that. So hopefully soon they'll be feeding themselves. And then their play is also very different. They don't do any form of imaginative play. They don't know how to do any of that yet. They like to label things. They have a huge vocabulary. They love their flashcards. They love to label anything. They're so incredibly smart. You're just going to notice that they don't communicate, they don't eat, they don't play like other 3-year-olds. So I just wanted to let you guys know before we start posting any more vlogs. Even if they get to the places they're supposed to be at now, when they're 5 years old or 6 years old or 20 years old, they're going to get to the place that they need to be. But for now, I just wanted to let you know that that is why they're different.